Okay, well, here we are going into week 6 of the NFL season, and it's a short week for the Eagles. They, of course, came off their first loss of the season, we haven't had too many losses in the last few years, so it's uncharted waters in some ways. It is what it is. The Broncos came into town and got the job done. The Eagles didn't. The Eagles had chances to win the game. They were up by 2 touchdowns in the second half going to the fourth quarter. And, you give the Broncos a lot of credit. They have a young team, but they got some talent, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. They have some playmakers on the offensive side. They ran the ball well. They didn't stop trying to run the ball. They played their game, and they walked away with a 1 point win. Now, it could have gone the other way. There were things that happened, as we know. The pass interference that wasn't called on Dallas Goedert on the second to last play of the game. Even the Hail Mary that Smitty had almost in his hands. It almost, was a miraculous catch and a miraculous win. But at the end of the day, it was a 1 point loss, and the Eagles are 4-1 on the season. Now, was it a terrible loss? Was it this earth-shattering thing that some people are making it out to be? I don't think so. It was an out-of-conference game. So for tie-break situations, I don't think that's going to hurt us too much. It was, like I said, the Eagles won their first four, and they had a pretty good gauntlet to start the season. Now they're defending champions, and you're going to have a tough schedule. I mean, that's just what it is. Teams that finish in first place in their divisions and teams that have, success the prior season are going to have tougher schedules on paper. On paper, you never know until you play the games what one team's going to be or another. There's injuries, there's inconsistent play. We know from year to year, you just don't know. You can kind of judge, okay, these handful of teams are definitely going to be really good year to year, and the rest we just don't know, right? You can put them all in a blender and see what happens. And there's always surprise teams, too. Right now, the Jaguars got off to a really good start. Big win for them on Monday Night Football last night against the Chiefs. So, it is what it is. But the Eagles started the season, of course, on banner night in front of good old Jarrah and the Cowboys, and we won that game in a close one, kind of a weird game with the lightning delay in the second half, and just a lot of sloppy play. But it was week one. You're going to get that in week one. You're going to get that in September in football, right, in the NFL. It's almost an extension to the preseason. A lot of people say, and I agree. Then in week two, they went to Kansas City, a tough place to play, even though the Chiefs right now are struggling right now out of the chute. But it's always a tough place to play, and the Chiefs had revenge on their mind from Super Bowl 59, and the fact that the Eagles actually beat them the last few times they played them in Arrowhead and in Super Bowl 59. So they had revenge, and it was a close game. The Eagles found a way to get a win, and a tough win on the road against a very good defense and a defensive coordinator, and of course Andy and Patrick. So that was a good win. And then they come back home. They take on the Rams, another team with revenge on the mind from last season, losing both times to the Eagles and getting humiliated by Saquon in both games. And it came down to the Eagles blocking a couple field goal attempts at the end. It was a different way to get a win, but again, they found a way to get a win. And then week 4 they go to Tampa, and that's been a big bugaboo place for the Eagles over the years. That has been a house of horrors for the Eagles. They have not fared well at the pirate ship, and I mean, most games have been losses there for the Eagles over the years, and they found another way to get a win. And then they come back home against Denver, another good team, a playoff team from a year ago, a team that's on the rise and well coached, and it looked like it was going to be another win going into the fourth quarter, but the Broncos found ways to get it done, and the Eagles didn't. And I heard on WIP this morning, Rhea Hughes said, and I agree. Rhea Hughes said, and I agree that the Eagles lost this game this past Sunday, the previous Sunday, after A.J. Brown put out his tweets on X. And then that just became the big thing. That became this big. Now, they dealt with A.J. Brown stuff a year ago with Jalen and A.J. And are they getting along, yes or no? And, A couple years ago, it would have derailed the season, but they didn't allow it to derail the season last year, and they kind of got past it, moved on, and ended up having a terrific run, right? Won the Super Bowl. I don't think it derails them this season. I think it derailed them last week. And I think it got into the coaches' heads a little too much. And they came out doing what the Eagles really shouldn't be doing. And it's not a knock on Jalen. And I know a lot of people knock on him for the passing and this and that. And I'm not one of them. The Eagles' game over the last few years when they've had a lot of success, right? They went to a Super Bowl, couldn't beat Kansas City. But then, and I know they had the debacle the year before, but they did start 10-1. And then last season, their success, their success is up front. They run the ball, and the running game leads to the passing game for them. Now, this season it's been a little tough. Obviously, teams have really tried to key in on stopping Saquon, and to this point, they've done it. And one of the reasons for that is the Eagles' offensive line has not been as strong as it's been in years past. One of the reasons for that is injuries. I think one of the reasons as well, even though it's early in a season, if I have to say it, there's some veterans, and it's fatigue. And, it's been brought up a few times, and I'm not trying to use it as an excuse, but it's been brought up a few times. When you have long runs year after year, and you're one of those teams that goes to the playoffs every year, has long playoff runs like the Eagles had 2 of the last 3 years, go to Super Bowls, it takes a toll. And you can see that right now early in the season. Guys are playing hurt, and in sports, they're warriors. They're going to play with injuries that a lot of us couldn't even work with. Couldn't even go to work, right? We'd be held up in a bed for weeks trying to get healthy. And I will never question an athlete's desire to play, even if they're playing hurt, because they're doing their job, even though they're dealing with injuries that a lot of us couldn't fathom, having. But there is a lot of injuries on this offensive line, and you see it. I mean, and the loss of Mekhi Becton was a big loss this offseason, because the Eagles like to run on his side of the line last season. You have him and Lane. That's two pretty good guys to try to run behind, 2 big boys there. And they're having some problems. Steen is not exactly getting it done as well as Becton did a year ago. You're seeing the problems with Landon Dickerson, being in and out of the lineup. Lane Johnson's been in and out of the lineup. Jordan Mailata has not had as good a start. And again, it's early. I mean, we're talking about this as early October. But Mailata on the left side of the line hasn't had as good a start as he's had in years past. So all this is equaling not as solid and as strong a running game as they've been accustomed to having, even before Saquon was here. Because they were running the ball pretty good years ago with guys like Miles Sanders and guys like Swift. Now Saquon came, who's a superstar, and he played like a superstar last year, right? This year he's had trouble getting it going, and part of it is because the offensive line hasn't had the success as it's accustomed to having. And part of it is the defenses. Look, you got to give the other team credit sometimes. And they have built their game plan week to week to not let 26 beat them. And not let this Eagles' vaunted offensive line and run game, beat them. And look, to this point, I mean, the proof is there. The Eagles have not been able to run as well. Saquon's numbers aren't nearly what they were. And I didn't expect him to have a year like he did a year ago. I mean, that was Madden stuff he was doing a year ago. You can't expect that every year, even for a back as good as Saquon. But I do think that they will get it going. I think one of the things we have to remember is that last season it took a little bit for this Eagles offense. Even though at times they looked explosive, it did take them some time to really get going. Remember, myself included, we were yelling at the coach. We wanted his head last season with some of the play calling and just the way the team looked. It really didn't turn the corner. And I think it's so ironic that they're playing the Giants this week. It really didn't turn the corner until they went to the Meadowlands and they whipped up on the Giants, and it just, from that point on, and I know they had a couple games, the Carolina game was closer than it should have been, and some other things, right? But for the most part, the Jacksonville game, but for the most part, they were just doing their thing from that point on, and they really caught fire. Both sides of the ball, the offense and the defense. right? They got Cooper DeJean involved. He came in off the injury. He was making plays. And it just started opening everything up for their defense. And then offensively, they were having a lot more success. They were scoring more points. They were running the ball, leading to the passing game. The team really started taking off around this time a year ago. And here we are a year later, and through 5 games, there's been a lot of questions. Why haven't they put together full 4 quarters? This, that, the other thing. What about this offensive coordinator, which they have a new one every year, it seems. But what's it going to do? What's it going to do, right? How are we going to do this? We have to remember, and I'm not saying at this point that Patullo is as good as what Moore did a year ago, but there were questions about Moore last season at this point, and that's something we have to remember. It takes time, even for the really good teams, to get going, to get that gear into that next level. And particularly for teams that make runs the year before. It just seems that the teams that are in the Super Bowl the year prior seem to come out a little sluggish that next year. And then as the season goes on, if they're the team that they should be, then you see them get going and putting it into that next gear. Unfortunately, a few years ago, the Eagles started really good, and then after that Niner game, it just all went to hell. It was terrible. I know, because I was sitting in the cold. I've said this a time or two. I was sitting in the frigid Meadowlands with my buddy Big Slim on the last week of the regular season, freezing our rear ends off, watching the Eagles get destroyed by the Giants and being heckled by Giant fans. And that's not good when you see how poor the Giants have been over the years. So we saw it, right, firsthand. Didn't end well. They got blown out in the playoffs by the Buccaneers in Tampa to end the season, and there were so many question marks going into last season. They made some moves. They brought Saquon in. They brought some other pieces in. There were still a lot of question marks going through week 5, week 6 last season until they finally found their gear. So they have to find that gear. And maybe it takes something like what happened last week for them to get it. Maybe they needed that kick in the rear. Maybe they needed a loss. You know the old saying, you smell yourself a little too much? Maybe they were. Now, they were finding different ways to win every week, to the chagrin of a lot of people who just say the Eagles win too much. And believe me, I've been an Eagles fan since '92 when they originally wore the Kelly Greens. And I just think it's humorous that when people say, oh, they win too. I can tell you a chapter and verse about seasons where we didn't win too much, where it was struggle, where it wasn't even the season it was a couple years ago with the 10-1 start, where they were just bad from start to finish. I mean, I remember some of those years, the early Andy Reid years, some of those other years, some of those, late Chip Kelly years, and some of these. I mean, it was, believe me, even the Doug Peterson after the Super Bowl year, there were some pretty tough years going in between the end of Doug and the beginning of Sirianni. And I remember some seasons also way before, in the late years with some of the other coaches that they had, the Ray Rhodes and the company like that, late in their times with the Eagles, where it just was, it was bad. And I can tell you about games. I mean, I still remember the damn Tommy Hutton game, the primetime game where we lost in Dallas on Tommy Hutton. And then Deion dancing around, and it. So I can tell you about a lot of losses that I've seen over the years, and that's just the regular season. I mean, I've seen, obviously, NFC Championship losses. I've seen Super Bowl losses. I've seen, like I said, playoff losses. So, it is funny to me. People say, oh, the Eagles, they just win too much. Believe me, it's okay that they win too much because of what we had to go through to get to these years where we are winning too much. It is. But it is what it is. What is it that that Harvey Dent said in The Dark Knight, that line? He said, you either become the hero or you live long or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, something like that. You're either the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, something like that. And it's almost like kind of reminiscent of what the Eagles are doing now to what other NFL fans see them. Like last season when the Eagles went against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, you had Bills fans like, boycotting the game and stuff. It's like, I mean, I'm sorry you guys lost 4 in a row in the 90s, but, okay, if your quarterback burrowed under instead of trying to go sideways over the top, maybe that would have been a first down against and it was a first down, I know, but It's like, if you can learn from Jalen how to get those first downs, you don't go over the top. You go under. That's the correct way to run the play anyhow. But no, it is comical to me. And that's another thing that the Eagles have to do. Listen, this might be one of those hot takes or whatever. When you're a team that wins, fan bases don't want to see it. And I can tell you, I bet you if you had some of the high ups in the league offices, if you had them giving them some truth serum and lock them in a room, oh, they'd all be wishing for a Bills-Lions Super Bowl this year. That's the Super Bowl they want to see. Two franchises that never won. The league wants parity. I mean, look, I know that the Chiefs have kind of, over the years with the calls or whatever. But again, if you were to lock some of these guys, they want parity. They want other teams to have success. They don't want just the same teams having success year after year after year. Yes, do those teams drive revenue for them? Yes, they do. The Eagles make a lot of money for the NFL. The Chiefs make a lot of money for the NFL. The Patriots in the day made a lot of money for the NFL, right? But the league, again, they don't want that. They don't want dynasties. Again, they put on the face that, these teams, look at all the success they've had. But again, you put them in a room and give them some truth serum. No, we don't want that. We don't want any dynasties in the league. We want this team to win this year, that other team to win, that's what they want. So when you have teams that are really good year after year after year, things are going to happen, right? There's going to be some games where maybe some of the calls start going for their opponents. And I'm not saying that's why the Eagles lost. I'm not saying that's why the Eagles lost this week. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But I'm watching this game, and look, the Eagles had a lot of self-inflicted wounds. They did. Motion penalties. Every time they got a positive play after the Saquon wheel route touchdown, it was called back because of penalty. And a lot of it was their doing. But then again, when you see a flag get pulled back for intentional grounding, which was intentional grounding by Bo Nix, the second time he did that, when he was turned around and he threw the ball, it's intentional grounding. And they pulled it. Oh, no, there was a guy over there, and they got his number wrong. That's how bad it was. They got the guy 28, and he was 82. So it's like, no, he wasn't there. It was intentional. It should have been intentional grounding. It should have made it a long third down. More than likely, Denver wouldn't have converted. They would have been punting in that situation. Instead, it stayed 3rd and 6. And look, they made the play. Sutton made the catch for a first down, but it was 3rd and 6 instead of 3rd and long, very long, with the intentional grounding on top. And that led to a touchdown. That drive led to a touchdown for them. So, again, if they correctly would have kept the flag for Denver, calling it intentional grounding, I don't think they score on that drive. Now, again, it doesn't come down to that. And some people say, well, but in the Dallas Goddard, the second to last play, that was a penalty, and it was. It truly was. I mean, he was mugged on the play, but it is what it is, right? You have to overcome that kind of thing. But it never should have came down to that. It never should have came down to the flag being picked up for intentional grounding on Denver to keep a drive going or make it a more manageable third down. The game was lost because the Eagles' inability on offense. A.J. Brown, when he had a go route, he stops. And here's a guy who did all that talking, all that, I want the ball, I want to help this team win, I want the ball. All right, A.J., well, you had a chance. There was a big play there, and you stopped. If he keeps going, that's either a touchdown or a big play that leads to points. And, again, you get that play, more than likely the Eagles win the game. More than likely, even if Denver makes a comeback, more than likely it's just too far for them to come back in the end. Or even if, with the fact that happened, if you run the ball, if you have balance in the second half, even though if you're not hitting these runs, you got to put faith in guys like Saquon. They're superstars for a reason. And eventually he's going to hit one. So he's not going to hit one if you don't get him the ball. So the fact that they just went way too pass happy in the game, and it led to too many 3-and-outs, and it gave Denver a chance to come back and win the game. That's what really gave them the chance, because you keep putting the Eagles defense out there, and they played spectacular this season, but they were tired, they were gassed. It wasn't as hot as it was in Tampa the week before, but it was a warm day out there. at the link last Sunday, and it was. I mean, you can tell it look. They had already played a game in steamy Tampa the week before, and now they're on the field for how long again the next week in the second half. They had nothing left. And you can tell because they were missing a lot of tackles. And this Eagles defense doesn't miss tackles like that. You had Zach Bond missing tackles. You had other guys missing They don't miss. This is a very sound tackling defense. And when they're missing tackles like that, you can tell they got nothing left. They got nothing left. And again, you give all the credit in the world to Denver. They made the plays, right? They ran the ball. The passing game was there. They were doing everything they wanted in those possessions. But again, if the Eagles just hold the ball, even if they don't score, but you get some first downs, right? You keep the clock going. You're limiting Denver's chance when they have the ball with the clock ticking down. It's the fourth quarter. But the fact that the Eagles just kept 3 and out, punting them, you're asking for trouble. And I've seen a lot of games like this over the years. Not just, this game last Sunday with the Eagles in Denver. I've seen a lot of teams blow games. We saw other teams blow games on Sunday, right? Arizona did it against the Titans. And some other teams did too. This was a weird week. This is one of those weeks where a lot of teams that were the underdog came in and won those games. It was one of those kind of strange weeks in the NFL. Right? And you're going to get that. Again, it's what the league wants. They want that parity. But I do find it kind of interesting that both the two undefeated teams left in the league, the Eagles and the Bills, both lost. Both at home. And the Bills lost to a divisional opponent. They lost to the Patriots. And all the social media, the attention still was on the Eagles' loss. Like they were making excuses for the Bills. And the Eagles are, they got found out. Got found out. Okay, we'll see. But the Bills is like they just wrote it off. It's just one of those things that happens. But with the Eagles, it was like, see, we told you. Enough. Again, the hate is real. The hater rate is out there. The social media and all these shows. That's what it is, right? They don't like us. And what the old saying in Philly is, no one likes us, we don't care, which is wrong because we do care. We care a little too much, I think. But this is just heavy the head that wears the crown. That's the old saying. And when you're a defending champion and when you're a team that's had a lot of success, people want to see you fail. It's like we've seen it. We've done it. I used to do it with the Patriots. I used to want to see them lose every week. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen. I didn't want to see them win because you just got tired of it after a while. Like, enough of this, enough of the hoodie and Brady and this and that. And they just keep finding ways and this and that. And then the Chiefs became that. The Chiefs were a likable team at first. People forget. Maybe not their divisional opponents, and some of the other teams in the AFC, maybe the Bills fans. But a lot of people, we didn't have anything against the Chiefs. Right? Oh, yeah, Andy, we were happy for him when he won his first Super Bowl, right? And Patrick Mahomes is a likable guy, and Travis and all this and that, and then they became the enemies. They became this evil, empire like Taylor Swift gets involved, and it just, they became this unlikable entity, and the Eagles are starting to become that around the league. I, as an Eagles fan, think it's funny. I just do. Because, again, I can tell you about a lot of years where it hasn't been successful. And I can tell you about a lot of games that didn't go our way. And for one reason or another. And, again, the playoff losses, the Super Bowl losses, right? It's what makes the push-tush so funny to me that everyone wants it out of here because the Eagles won a Super Bowl last year. This push was going on for the past few years. The Eagles didn't win, so it didn't become a thing until the Eagles won, and then, we got to ban this play. We got to get rid of it because they're too good at it. Anybody can run the play. It's not just the Eagles. The Eagles just do it because they practice it. We talk about practice, right? But a lot of things have happened in the league. The 49ers invented an offense back in the 80s, the West Coast offense. They didn't take that away. Teams adapted to it. The Oilers used to run, or the Bills rather, used to run the K-gun. They went to 4 straight Super Bowls doing it. They didn't take it away. Teams adapted to it. Now, they didn't win the Super Bowls, but they got there. They were one of the more dominant teams in the 90s in the AFC, and they had an offense that was their offense. The old run and shoot offense. Well, the Oilers used to run that, but they didn't win. So people didn't make a deal of it, right? When teams have success, anymore, like Reese, this is more of a recent phenomenon. Like I said, the 49ers brought their own offense. That was their offense. And they went to, they were the dynasty in the 80s. They were the only team. They were the most successful with that offense because it was theirs. They developed it. That was what they ran. But teams had to adapt to it. It's the same thing with anything else, the tush-push, whatever it is. It's not like the Eagles just tush-push all the way down the field. It's a short yardage play. It's a goal line play. Teams can run the play. The Eagles are just so good at it because they had a great offensive line. They had Jalen. They had Saquon. They had guys that could, burrow under and use their legs to get that extra yard. That is what it is. Again, when you have success, when you win at the highest level, people want to find something, and they want to take it away. So it's that. Out of here with that. It's stupid. Now look, they're probably going to get rid of the play this offseason, and as a fan, it is what it is. The Eagles are still going to be good at quarterback sneaks. It might not be the tush push or the brotherly shove or whatever you want to call it, but they'll still be one of the best teams in the league at the quarterback sneak. So what are we going to do? We're going to take the quarterback sneak away? Is that the next thing that's going to go? Because the Eagles are going to be too good at it. I'm telling you. They were good at it when they had Carson Wentz here. They were one of the best teams in the league. Tom Brady was the best at it. No one ever made a deal of it. They didn't take the quarterback sneak away because Tom Brady was the best quarterback at the quarterback sneak in those years when the Patriots were dynasties. They didn't take it away. Again, people want to find something. People want to nitpick. It's always going to be something. When you're on top, there's always going to be something. People want, there's a reason. There's it's that. And they point to it, and it's just stupid. It's just dumb. That's why I really don't want to talk about it here on this channel in this series, just because I think it's a waste. I just do. It's a play. It's not their whole offense. It's a play. That's part of their offense. That's a very minute little part of their offense. It's in there. They can use it, but it's not their whole offense. But talking about their offense, I do want to see them this Thursday night get back to having that balance. And even if they run the ball more than they pass it, okay. And then again, I'm not saying it as a knock on Jalen. I think he's a great quarterback. He's a winner. He wins a lot. And so people don't like that, right? So that's why they're going to nitpick him. Jalen does it different than a lot of other quarterbacks. Jalen's never going to be one of these guys that puts up 400-yard passing games. It's just not what he does. But he's a very good, he's a great leader, and he wins. I don't know what else you want. In this area, and I listen to sports talk probably too much, but there's a lot of complaints. There's a lot of callers that call in about Jalen. The guy won a Super Bowl, was an MVP in the Super Bowl last year. Beat Patrick Mahomes. And in 2 Super Bowls, he outplayed Patrick in both Super Bowls. He has an incredible winning percentage against some of the best quarterbacks in the league. All right, maybe Bo Nix got him last week. So Bo's 1-0 against Jalen. Congrats to Bo. But other than that, you look at his record against some of the top all these guys that people say, look, well, they're here and Jalen's here. Okay, well, look at Jalen's record versus those quarterbacks. And I understand it's not quarterback to quarterback. When you're playing games, your quarterback's going against the opposing defense. You're not going against the opposing quarterback. I get that. But he has an incredible winning record against some of the best quarterbacks going right now. But yet he doesn't get the credit for it because he doesn't throw for 300 yards a game. I just think, look, you win, you win. To me, as a fan, I just want to see my team win. You can talk about the schematics. You can talk about, well, it has to look this way, and it has to look that way. Okay, well, I see these other quarterbacks put up these huge, gaudy numbers, win MVPs, league MVPs, and some of them have never even been to the Super Bowl because they lose in the playoffs. Why? Because they make mistakes. They throw interceptions at the wrong time. There might be a fumble in the snow. They might do this or that costs them the game. Jalen usually doesn't do that. He doesn't make the big mistake in the crucial part of the game, usually. Now, a few years ago, when the Eagles were having their collapse after the 10-1 start, Jalen threw a lot of interceptions. And I think it may have been one of those eye-opening things to him that he doesn't want to turn the ball over like that because he was labeled a quarterback that throws a lot of picks. So he runs an offense, the Eagles run an offense, and he runs a type of offense where he doesn't put the ball in jeopardy. Now, is that always great? No, because he does miss wide open receivers or receivers who might not be wide open right there, but there's a chance they can be if he just puts the ball in certain areas. And it is a little maddening watching that. I know even Romo made a big deal of it last week when there was a play in the end zone where it looked like Devontae Smith may have gotten open if Jalen just would have thrown the ball at that time towards the corner of the end zone. But Devontae at the time was covered by a corner, and Jalen didn't want to turn the ball over in the end zone and take points off the board. You know, do I want to see Jalen get a little more aggressive throwing the ball? Sure. Any Eagle fan wants to, right? Yeah, too much hair. But at the same time, there is something to be said about this guy who, when he has started and finished games, his winning percentage is just otherworldly with this franchise. And part of the reason why is because he doesn't turn the ball over. The last few years, last season in the Super Bowl run, this season so far, going into this Thursday night game in Week 6 against the Giants, he hasn't thrown interceptions. He doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. He doesn't give the defense chances to get the ball. And that can be maddening to an opposing defense. And that's, I think, why there's a lot of people out there just that don't understand Jalen, that don't like his brand of football, because he doesn't do a lot. He doesn't put the ball in jeopardy. He's not a gunslinger. In this league, everyone wants to see the gunslinger, right? The Josh Allens. That's what they want, right? The Joe Burrows. That's what they want to see. They want the gunslingers. Even Patrick Mahomes, the gunslinger. Oh, put the ball in the air. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, we had a game last week where they came out and they mostly passed the ball and they lost. And in the previous 4 weeks, when they ran the ball more and they had balance, it wasn't perfect for 4 quarters, but they weren't just out there overly passing the ball. They won all 4 games. Now, I'm not going to tell you that they can go the rest of the season and go back to what they were doing the first 4 weeks and all they're going to do is win. No, they'll have some losses. But you got to just be who you are. What's Popeye used to say, right, for all the old heads out there, right? I am what I am, right? I am what I am. The Eagles' offense is what it is. They have a lot of weapons. They got AJ and Smitty. You got Goddard in there. You got Saquon and the offensive line. You got a lot of weapons. You got a lot of ways to win games on offense. And their defense is pretty damn good. And sometimes that does get overlooked. I mean, they do play really good defensively. I know last week, they gave up some touchdowns or whatnot. But for the most part, they played really well this season, and they played really well a year ago in route to winning a Super Bowl. Guess what? They routed the Chiefs, and part of the reason is how well the defense played in that game. All that pressure they kept getting on Mahomes without blitzing, amazingly. But that's Vic Fangio. That's that defense, that defensive mastermind. Glad he's here with us. They have a lot of young players. They have some youth. They'll make some mistakes. But at the end of the season, I'll tell you, the Eagles' defense is going to be one of the best in the league. I don't know if they'll be number 1 again as they were a year ago, but they'll certainly be a top 3 to 5 defense at the end of the season. And that helps go with the offense, right? Got to have that balance. Those teams that have it are the teams that are going to have success, right? One of the reasons why Detroit didn't win last year, they had too many injuries on defense. And all that offensive firepower didn't help them at the end. They made mistakes. Golf through interceptions, right, in the playoffs against the Commanders. And their defense was really banged up. Otherwise, that's a team that could have gone far, could have gone to the NFC title game, maybe even gone to the Super Bowl last year, right? The Eagles were on the other side of the page. The Eagles came together at that time. They had a lot of health. They were lucky for that. But they were playing really well on offense and defense at that time of the year when they had to do it. And they went ahead and got to the Super Bowl and crushed the Chiefs and won the second Lombardi in franchise's history. But the Eagles had balance. They found it. And it took them a little while last season to find that. And that's one thing we all forget because we remember them winning at the end, right? We remember the confetti coming down for us, right? And all the success that they had. But it took them a little while to find it. And they got to find it again this season. That might be a little tougher for them this season because now they're the hunted. Whereas last year they were the hunter. This year they're the hunted. They're going to get everyone's best. They got the Broncos' best. They got Tampa. Every team that plays them. You're going to get that team's best because you're playing against the champs. And when you play against the champs, it's like I said, back after the Eagles won in 2017, that following season, they're going to get everyone's best because they're playing the champs. It's a 5-star game. When you're playing the team that's a defending champion or a team that's been a champion like Kansas City in recent years, you're going to get that team's best performance. Regardless of who's on the field and who's not, you're going to get that team's best performance. And the Eagles are going to get it. I mean, the Giants right now, I don't think they're a very good team. They have some young players. I think it was good of them to start the rookie in Dart. And he's going to make mistakes. He's a rookie, but let him make the mistakes now. If I'm a Giants fan, hey, look, you have some things to hang your hat on. You have a very good pass rush, young players. This is a team that this season they're not a playoff team, but they will be. They're going to be pretty good in a few years. They're putting it together there. It was still very dumb of them to move Saquon last season. That didn't work out too well. And now Danny Dimes is doing his thing in Indiana. Giant fans just can't seem to win. The players that leave them do just incredible. But no, they do have some pieces there. And I know, look, people say, oh, the Eagles are just going to run over them. I don't know. It could be a game. It's a short week. It's on the road. And you're playing yet again another week where we're playing against a team with a very good pass rush. We've done that just about every week, besides maybe the Dallas game. Then you go to Kansas City, pass rush. You go against the Rams, pass rush. You go against the Bucks, pass rush. You go against Denver, pass rush. Lead the league in sacks, right, and QB hurries so far on the season. Now you go against the Giants, even though it's a young team for the most part, very good pass rush. Then you go against the Vikings, and that's another pass rush. Then the Giants again, pass rush. They're going to see teams over these next few weeks, as they have to start the season, that get that pass rush. And that's where the onus has to fall on the offensive line. It has to fall on Jalen, but it also has to fall on the coaches. The game plan has to be set in place to beat that pass rush because you know it's going to come. You know it's coming. The Giants, the Vikings, the Giants. You're going to see pass rush these next 3 games, as you have already. And there's been times they've looked great against it, and there's been times that they've not looked so great against it. But you got to devise the schemes. You got to put together the game plans week to week, going up against teams that have good pass rush. You got to have balance, and that means you can't just get pass happy. Just because AJ is going to complain and maybe put some tweets out there, you can't just appease him because it's about the team. And I know they had a team meeting that the leaders got together particularly on offense, had a team meeting, and that's fine. But it's good to get on the right page, but the coaches have to get on that right page too. They got to. The play calling has to be better. It has to be better. It has to be better for 4 quarters. I want to see a 4-quarter game. I want to see a 4-quarter game on Thursday night against the Giants. I want to see a 4-quarter game against Minnesota. I want to see a 4-quarter game again against the Giants on Kelly Green Day at the Link in that game, the first Kelly Green game of the season. I want to see 4 quarters out of this team. I know they're capable of doing it. Yeah, they have some injuries and inconsistencies on the offensive line, and that might hurt them. But I gotta see better. I know there's better there, and you can't let a diva receiver basically control how the game plan's going to go. Look, when you're a good receiver in the league, when you're one of the top receivers, they're all divas. They all want the ball. This goes back to Randy Moss and years before. That's just what it is. It comes with the position. That's why Smitty is always interesting to me because he's so quiet. He's a very good receiver. I don't think he gets enough credit that he should. He doesn't talk. He doesn't get demonstrative. He doesn't go on Twitter and social media and, I need the ball. He just seems to be a very humble guy. But AJ is one of those diva receivers, and he wants the football, even though he did stop his route last week when he could have probably had a touchdown. But he wants the ball. He's a diva receiver. They all do. There's nothing new about that. But the Eagles got to overcome that. They overcame it a year ago with the drama. They're going to have to overcome it again this season with the drama. That's just what it's going to be. If AJ's here again next season, I'm sure there'll be more drama. But you got to overcome it. Unfortunately, a few years ago, they couldn't overcome the drama, and they fell apart. And it wasn't just AJ; it was other players too. Some of the players probably aren't here anymore. But maybe in some ways in the defensive room, maybe there wasn't something with some of those defensive players like a Hassan Reddick or what. I don't know. I'm not in there, but maybe there was something going on there. Maybe there's something going on with some of those other players that are no longer here. I'm not talking about the retired guys like Fletcher Cox or BG, but some of those other players who weren't retained after they were off the team, right? After they were free agents, the Eagles didn't go after them again. Maybe there was something there. I don't know. Again, I'm not in the locker room. I'm not a reporter. I'm not even trying to put it out there in the universe. I like Hassan Reddick. I liked him when he was here. Temple Tough had some really solid years with the Eagles. But, there were some rumblings going on that, things just weren't meshing with some of those players in the coaching staff. I don't know who. I threw Hassan's name out there. Maybe I shouldn't have. But I'm just based off who they decided to keep and who they decided not to keep. I don't know. It's just like CJ GJ. I really liked him as a player. He seemed to be a playmaker. But there's a reason he can't seem to stay on a team out there. Houston, he couldn't even make it a month. So there must be something there with him. I don't know. I know he was just picked up by the Ravens today. But, it is what it is. Look, we won a Super Bowl with him, and it is what it is, right? We got to another Super Bowl when he was here in Super Bowl 57. But there may have been, obviously a couple years ago, there was just too much going on and too much for them to overcome. Just too much infighting. And the coaches couldn't control it. And the season just fell out of hand. I don't think that's going to happen this season. There was some worry out there that, this is just going to be like it was a couple years ago and they're going to fall apart and this is going to happen just like it did a couple years ago. I don't think that's going to happen. And I do like the fact that they had a team meeting today, that they're trying to work things through, right? They know what the bigger prize is. They just played for it last season, right, in the Super Bowl. They know that's the ultimate prize. To end the season with the hardware, to have the parade down Broad Street, and to end the season on the steps of the Art Museum, in front of the millions of fans. They saw that. They know what that is. And it's just like anything else. You want that again. Now, is it guaranteed this season? No. No, it isn't. Nothing's guaranteed. Nothing in life is guaranteed besides taxes. But they know what that goal is because they experienced it. They experienced both of it. They experienced losing and having the confetti fall on them for the wrong reasons in the other team's colors that Jalen still has on his phone. And they also experienced what it is to win it and have the confetti fall in their colors on them as champions. And when you do that, you want it again and again and again. And again, it's not guaranteed, and there's a lot of tough teams. It's going to be very tough to repeat. It just is. Again, they're the hunted right now, and they're going to get every team's best, including if they make the postseason, they get in there, believe me, it's going to be that much tougher. That's why you marvel at the teams that are able to do it year after year after year, like the Patriots were doing it, like the Chiefs were doing it. I got tired of it, but you also marvel at it because you see with the Eagles just how hard it is year after year. When you get there, that next season, it's that much tougher to get back there. And for those teams that were able to do it, that's an incredible thing. It just is. Football's a tough sport. There's injuries. There's all sorts of stuff. It is hard to win that Lombardi. We know that, right? There's still fan bases that are waiting to get their moment. It's a tough thing. And particularly when you win it to repeat, to get it again, it's even tougher. And so when teams do it, you got to appreciate that, right? We're trying to do it, right? This fan base, we're trying to repeat as a champion. It hasn't happened in franchise history since the 40s, before Lombardi trophies. It happened back-to-back years in the 40s for the Eagles. Yes, boys and girls, there were NFL championships before there were Super Bowls. I know the Super Bowl became the big end-all, be-all, but there were championships, and the Eagles won 3 of them before the Super Bowl became a thing. including in the 40s when they won back-to-back. And the franchise hasn't won a back-to-back championship ever since. It's a very difficult thing to do. Listen, in this city, the last time a team won back-to-back was the Flyers, 74-75, before I was born, 1978. I haven't seen it, in all my years. Come close a couple times. The Phillies got, won in 08, got back in 09, and lost to the Yankees. I saw that. Sixers haven't done it. Eagles haven't done it. Maybe came a little close. They had a year where they lost. They didn't get back. Then they got back and they won. And now we're trying to win again. I remember after 2017, right? We won. Everything's feeling great. Then the next season, it was tough. It was a tough year. Because they were the hunted. And they are the hunted again. And whether other fan bases can't take it anymore, well, as an Eagle fan, and we all know as Eagle fans, we're appreciative of this because we know the other way. We know the other side of it just much too much. So we appreciate this. We know how to appreciate this. But it's going to come with agita. It's going to come with drama. It is. That's what sports is. That's the blessing and the curse of it. That's just what it is. So, but you know what? This team is still really good. I believe in it. They're 4-1, off to a really good start still, even with that loss. Got to get back in the win column this Thursday night. I think it's going to be a tough game. I think the Giants, coming off that loss in New Orleans, they're playing with a little more spirit because they got that rookie quarterback there in Dart. And they got some young players that are trying to make a name for themselves in the league. And it's a division rivalry. So those teams are going to get up for it. And look, the Giants remember how the Eagles handled them last season, so they're going to want to get some revenge in their stadium this week. Even though there's going to be a lot of green in that stadium, they're going to want to get some revenge and some comebacks on the Eagles. We'll see. NFC East games, hey, there's a lot of drag-out fights in these games, so you just never know which way it can go. I know the Eagles had a lot of success in the NFC East last year, where they go 5-1, I believe, in division play. The only loss was that tough one in against Washington when Jalen left with the concussion, but in concussion protocol, I should say. And it still came down to the very end, and if Smitty catches that ball, they go 6-0 in the division. Now, they did make up for it in the NFC title game against Washington, and they remember how much Washington celebrated after Washington beat them in that game. But division games, particularly in the NFC East, and I know that the Hard Knocks in season is going to be the NFC East this season. I look forward to that later in the year. But NFC East games are tough. They're just black and blue, hard, tough fought games at times, and I think this is going to be one of them. I do. It's a short week. Giants again coming off a tough loss. The Eagles are too. But, again, the fact the Eagles are the defending champions, we're going to get the Giants' best in this one. We are. And they got a pass rush, and they got some playmakers. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think the Eagles win. I do. I think we will get a win. I think it was a wake-up call for them this past week, losing at home to the Broncos. I think they get a win. I think it's going to be tough. But I think we get a win to go to 5-1 and then have a little break there before we take on the Vikings. Jake's Vikings. Shout out to Jake. Anyhow, I'm going to go for now, but this is my take on what was week 5 and going into week 6. Eagles, again, 4-1 coming off their first loss of the year. Things need to be corrected. Hopefully they can make those corrections. I'm still very optimistic and positive on how the team is playing, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And, we're going to see what happens here. So let's go Birds as always. And what do you always got to do? Hit that like button, like, subscribe. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, looking for 2K subs by the end of the year, you can make that happen by keep hitting the sub button and hit the bell icon so you're always notified to all future content from yours truly, whether it's the Season of the Fan series, the In the Life series, if that's a word, or the new Mighty Reviews series. So you never want to miss an episode. You're going to see a lot of me this week, as I said last night on the inaugural Mighty Reviews vid. But anyhow, that's going to do it for me. Go Birds! I will see you all in the next one, and we'll take it from there. All right, everyone. Take care.